badge that returned from the dead. What if I told you that right now, somewhere in America, there's a man walking free who should be dead? What if his own government buried him alive with paperwork, erased him with a keystroke, and made his wife mourn a ghost? This isn't fiction. This happened. Picture this. It's 5:58 p.m. on a Tuesday. A Border Patrol agent calls in his location. Then, nothing. His GPS goes dark. His radio falls silent. His patrol car vanishes like smoke. But here's what'll keep you awake tonight. 9 years later, his badge shows up in a locked mailbox that nobody should have had access to. Inside, a note in his own handwriting. I didn't break. They did. Who is they? And if he's dead, who wrote that note? The man who disappeared was Marcus Rivera, a good agent, a loving husband, a man who believed in justice. But Marcus made one fatal mistake. He saw something he wasn't supposed to see. And in America's shadow zones, those places that don't officially exist, people who see too much don't just lose their jobs. They lose their identities, their lives, their right to exist. What you're about to hear isn't just a missing person case. It's a surgical dissection of how power operates when nobody's watching, how good people get erased, how truth becomes a crime punishable by disappearance. Fair warning, once you start listening, you'll start questioning everything. Every official report, every closed case, every time someone in authority says, nothing to see here, because after Marcus Rivera, you'll know that sometimes there's everything to see. Before diving deeper into this rabbit hole that goes straight to the heart of institutional corruption, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell. Trust me, you'll want to follow every twist in this maze of deception. Now, let me take you back to September 4th, 1995, the day a good man stepped into America's shadow zone and never came back. The late afternoon sky in Copper Ridge, Arizona, burned crimson like spilled blood, casting long shadows through the windows of a Ford Bronco bearing the U.S. Border Patrol emblem. Agent Marcus Rivera frowned as he watched the darkening sunlight on the horizon. Heat rising from the ground made the air shimmer like molten glass, and he had just checked his radio for the third time in 10 minutes. The Blackstone station remained unusually quiet. No alerts, no emergency calls, only the haunting whistle of wind through abandoned power lines. His shift had started at 1 p.m., and now it was nearly 5:40 p.m. when the border typically stirred with shadowy activities after dusk. But today, everything felt restrained, silent, eerily still. Marcus was the first to receive a report from an unmanned control unit near the Devil's Canyon Range that a silver pickup truck, unregistered, had passed a checkpoint without stopping. Could be a local who got lost, he thought, but his instincts wouldn't let his guard down. The station chief told him to drive up and check. Just a formality, they said, but go early if you can. He didn't object. This was his calling. That's why he wore the olive green uniform, heavy with the scent of sun and desert wind. Every day, keeping one hand on the wheel, eyes scanning every dusty ridge, every low shrub along the treacherous road. From the radio, the crackling voice of his colleague Derek Walsh came through, familiar enough that Marcus didn't need to glance at the screen. Marcus, stick to the assigned route. Don't take Highway 102 again. Today's GPS route is 77C. Got it. Marcus hesitated for a few seconds. Route 77C was a detour, about 3 miles longer, full of rocky hills and hard to monitor. But according to the map he'd received from Derek that morning, today's direct route was Highway 102. Closer, more convenient. Checked just yesterday. He didn't respond right away, only nodded to himself before saying into the radio, "Copy that. I'll update if anything's suspicious." The air inside the car was thick with the smell of old leather and scorching plastic. On the passenger seat, A small notebook lay quietly with a photo of Carmen, his wife, tucked inside. She was smiling, eyes closed against the sun with their old house's backyard in the background, where they'd promised to fix the broken fence. "Be back before 7, she'd said that morning. "We're having enchiladas tonight." He'd nodded, and in that moment, nothing could have convinced him it would be the last time he saw her alive. At 5:58 p.m., Marcus's GPS signal abruptly vanished. The radio stayed on, but received no response. Security footage at the station captured the final image. Marcus speaking into his radio, left hand on the wheel, right hand on the transmit button, eyes focused on the distance. Then the image flickered for a second, and that was it. Nothing more. No trace of the vehicle left behind. No dropped items. No tire marks veering off the road. Both Marcus and the Ford Bronco vanished as if they had never existed on that desolate border road. And that afternoon, the wind still howled through the sand as usual. The sky remained indifferently red, and the twilight glow swept across the barren land as if nothing had happened. But that wasn't true. Something had happened. Something no one at the station dared to name. And in the Blackstone file storage, Marcus Rivera's duty log for September 4th, 1995 remained blank. Not a single line written. This dawn in Copper Ridge wasn't loud like other places. It crept through the window blinds, thin as a whisper, disturbing the fine dust on weathered window frames. Carmen Rivera woke before her alarm. She had for the past 9 years, each morning waiting for something, though she didn't know exactly what. The landline rang at 6:13 a.m., an hour when no one calls unless it's urgent. Carmen sat up instantly, her heart pounding with the instinct of someone who'd lived alongside a border agent. On the third ring, she picked up. "Hello," her voice hoarse from restless sleep. "Qui, Mrs. Rivera?" A woman's voice came through, clear and authoritative, but unfamiliar. "I'm Agent Victoria Sterling, Department of Homeland Security." Carmen held her breath. Those words, Department of Homeland Security, were what she'd both longed and dreaded to hear all these years. "Yes, I'm Marcus Rivera's wife," she replied, eyes fixed on the blinds where pale light was spreading. The other end was silent for a few seconds before continuing. "I'm sorry for calling so early, but I need you to confirm some details this morning. Yesterday, while processing abandoned mailboxes at the Copper Ridge Distribution Center, staff found something significant." Carmen gripped the receiver tightly. Her heart began to race like a trapped bird. A locked mailbox number 68 was opened after no claimant for nearly a decade. Inside, we found a fabric bag containing a Border Patrol badge with Marcus Rivera's name. The kitchen felt deathly silent. The wall clock's ticking sounded sharp and piercing. Carmen felt as if someone had sliced through the air around her with a frozen blade. "A badge," she repeated, as if not daring to believe the word. Victoria continued. "The badge is slightly oxidized, but the ID number is clear. There was also a torn piece of uniform fabric ripped at the shoulder and a piece of paper, possibly in Mr. Rivera's handwriting, with the words, 'I didn't break. They did.'" Carmen closed her eyes. Those words cut like a serrated knife, not just for their meaning, but for the ink, the handwriting she could picture in her mind. The slanted script, slightly shaky at the word break, was exactly how Marcus wrote when he was disturbed. "Why was the mailbox only open now?" she asked, her voice catching. It was a rented box registered under a private company, expired in 1998. Someone may have placed the evidence there after Mr. Rivera disappeared, but the old tracking system didn't flag it because no one reported it locked. Carmen stood, walked to the sink, turned on the faucet, but didn't drink. Her hands trembled like autumn leaves. "Ew," Victoria continued. "I've reported to my superiors, but before sending the evidence to Washington, I wanted to ask you directly. Is this your husband's badge?" Carmen nodded slightly, then realized Victoria couldn't see. Marcus never took off his badge, even at home. It was part of him. Victoria paused, then hesitated. I'll come to your house in 30 minutes with the evidence, if you're okay with that. Carmen hung up after confirming her address. She stood still for a long time by the window, where sunlight began to pour in, golden like ancient honey. In the kitchen, the kettle clicked softly, signaling it was ready, as it did every morning, but this morning was different. For 10 years, Carmen had learned to live with absence, not death, because Marcus was never declared dead, but a living void, like a crack in the foundation that kept widening over time. Sometimes she imagined he'd wandered into another desert, another reality where no one asked, "Do you have papers?" or pressed a delete button on existence. She'd written to Homeland Security, filed lawsuits, called the press, broken down in the middle of a grocery store, then silence, then waiting, and now a locked mailbox, a badge, a cryptic sentence like desert sand. I didn't break. They did. Who were they? Who broke? Who broke him? When Victoria knocked at 6:49 a.m., Carmen was ready. She wore the navy dress Marcus had loved, applied a touch of pale lipstick, and sat straight-backed as if at an unofficial tribunal. Victoria was a petite woman with sharp obsidian eyes carrying a tan evidence bag. When she placed the badge on the table, she said nothing, just gently opened the fabric lining. Carmen looked. It was Marcus's badge. There was a small scratch on the right edge, exactly where he'd said it got nicked by a concrete edge while crouching during a pursuit. Those details couldn't be mistaken. Carmen didn't cry. She only said, "It's still warm." Victoria looked up, surprised. Carmen shook her head slightly, her voice a whisper. "I don't mean it's hot. I mean, it's still warm with his presence." In that moment, Victoria understood she wasn't facing just a witness, but a living fragment of memory, persistent, resisting oblivion with every piece of evidence. And the investigation closed under case number 4097K was now reopened for the first time in nearly a decade. Not because of evidence, but because of someone who never accepted silence as an answer. To Warner Union. Sigur's mailbox number 68 sat at the end of a row of public mailboxes at the Copper Ridge Distribution Center, a small weathered beige warehouse about 3 miles from town. The square metal boxes were stacked in 4 rows, 18 per row, with peeling silver paint and rust spreading around the locks like a disease, when warehouse worker Glenn Torres inserted the master key from the archive log. He expected nothing unusual. It was just a quarterly inventory, checking abandoned mailboxes for leftover items before clearing them. But when the lock on number 68 clicked open with a dry snap, Glenn froze. Inside wasn't junk mail or piled up letters, but a small black fabric bag tightly bound with nylon cord. On the outside was an old taped note, its faded blue ink reading, "For official use only, do not remove." Glenn was cautious, and above all, he was a man whose brother had gone missing while serving in the Border Patrol. He didn't touch the bag, just closed the box, sealed it, and reported it to the local office. Within an hour, Agent Victoria Sterling arrived with 2 forensic techs and recording equipment. When the box was reopened under camera surveillance, no one spoke for the first 30 seconds. The black fabric bag was pulled from the slot slowly, as if it held a silent life waiting to be named. Victoria gloved up and opened the bag. Inside were 3 items. A Border Patrol badge turned bronze with age, a piece of olive green uniform fabric with gold stitching torn at the shoulder, and a folded piece of paper, its ink partly blurred, but still legible. "I didn't break." They did. All 3 were loosely wrapped in an old Ziploc bag. Victoria frowned. She'd seen evidence hidden to mislead before, but this wasn't like that. No signs of coercion, no haste. Everything was neatly arranged, as if someone wanted it found, but not too soon. Mailbox 68 hadn't had a renter since 1998, Before that, it was registered to a small law firm, Mesa Verde Logistics LLC, which shut down in 1999. No one had requested to reopen it since. What caught Victoria's attention most was the lock. Not the standard post office type, but a custom one manually attached after the box's lease expired. Someone had deliberately kept this box locked all these years without detection. Meticulous, a forensic tech muttered. Clearly planned. Victoria said nothing, but her eyes scanned the row of mailboxes. A small detail stopped her. The surrounding boxes were coated in thick dust, but 68 had less, just enough to notice someone had wiped its surface no more than a month ago. He might still be around, she thought, still tending to this box like a hidden shrine. She ordered fingerprints taken from the lock, handle, and bag surface. Then she had the evidence moved to secure storage. While the forensic team worked, Victoria sat in the post office's temporary office, eyes on the window where morning light hit the faded concrete floor. Her fingers brushed the badge, kept temporarily to show Carmen that morning. She opened her phone, accessed the internal database, and pulled Marcus Rivera's original file. The status still read, missing in action, case closed, 1996. Noted, no signs of foul play, possible voluntary disappearance. Victoria repeated to herself. No signs of foul play. Then what was the note? The torn fabric, and why hide them in a mailbox forgotten for 9 years? If someone wanted to cover it up, there were 100 better places. But if someone wanted to leave a clue, a signal of life, what better place than a lock only opened when time dulled memory and the system grew careless? She stood and walked back to the mailbox area. Glenn was still there, anxious. Victoria asked if anyone suspicious had visited recently. Glenn shook his head, but then recalled something. There was a strange man, over 50, here at night last month. I saw him on the old security camera, but he just stood there, did nothing, so I let it go. Victoria requested the footage. It was grainy black and white, shaky, but clear enough to show a figure standing before mailbox 68 for over 2 minutes. Not opening it, not doing anything, just standing. And finally tapping the metal door 3 times before walking away. No license plate, no clear face. But Victoria knew that person wasn't there by chance. And those 3 taps were like a message, a wake-up call for someone patient enough, hopeful enough to listen. Now the mailbox was open. The question was, who would open the next door? And what was waiting behind it? Carmen sat on the porch steps where Marcus used to set his coffee every morning before driving to Blackstone. The tiles had cracked over time, the gaps filled with dust and stubborn weeds. She looked at her hands, roughened by years of waiting, then up at the quiet gray-white sky above. The same sky, the same house, the same September, but 9 years ago when her world collapsed in a burning afternoon. On September 4th, 1997, Carmen was working a night shift at the small Copper Ridge Medical Center when the phone rang at 11:47 p.m. It was Derek Walsh, Marcus's colleague. A tense voice trying to stay calm. He didn't return to the station, and we can't reach him. At first, she thought it was equipment failure, then a delay. Marcus was cautious, meticulous to the point of annoying others. He'd once said, "My job isn't catching border crossers. It's coming home alive." But that day, he didn't come home, and no one found any trace. No Ford Bronco, no final radio signal, no tire marks, no witnesses, as if he'd fallen into an invisible rift between the border and the darkness. For the first weeks, Carmen didn't eat or sleep. She called every border station, every agency. She went to Blackstone, stood among olive uniforms and pitying glances, demanding to see security footage, duty logs, anything. She'd screamed at the station commander, a burly man named Captain Morrison. "You say he took the wrong route, but who assigned it? Did anyone confirm he actually changed routes?" He didn't answer, just bowed his head and said, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Rivera. We did all we could." She didn't believe him. She hired a lawyer, filed with Homeland Security, contacted 2 local TV stations. A young reporter interviewed her in her kitchen, asking, "Do you think he left on his own?" That question made her break down, not because of the possibility, but because it was asked so casually, as if disappearing was as simple as taking a vacation. They said he might have been kidnapped by a cartel. They said he might have been a double agent. Then when they found nothing, they said maybe he lost control, got paranoid, and fled. Missing slowly turned into deserted without cause. A year later, the official file closed with a note. No evidence of foul play, presumed deceased, but they had no body and no apology. Just a thin letter from Homeland Security stating that pension benefits would stop without new evidence within 12 months. Carmen never threw out that letter. She pressed it between 2 panes of glass, placed it on the altar beside Marcus's photo as proof of how a person could be erased with a single line of text. She joined a support group for families of the missing, where mothers and wives shared stories of nameless disappearances. But after a few meetings, she stopped. Marcus's story was too quiet. No sensational details, no blood, no clear culprit, just a void, and no one knew how to fill it. Once, Carmen visited the priest at St. Michael's Church. She asked, "If someone is swallowed by silence, does God hear them?" He quoted a Bible verse, but she didn't catch it. She never went back to that church. Every year on the anniversary of his disappearance, she placed a hot cup of coffee. Black, no sugar, like Marcus drank. On the porch, sometimes she sat by it for hours, waiting for something to happen, and of course, nothing did. Time didn't heal, as people claimed. It only cooled the pain like an old burn, not stinging, but aching when the weather turned. Then one day, the phone rang at 6 a.m. A strange female voice said, "We found your husband's badge in a locked mailbox." For the first time in 9 years, Carmen's heart raced with something other than pain, something close to hope. Or not hope that Marcus was alive. She didn't dare dream that far. But hope that those silent years might not have been meaningless, that someone, somewhere, had kept a piece of Marcus, a piece of the truth, and decided now was the time to reveal it. When she looked at the badge gleaming under the kitchen light, Carmen didn't see an inert object. She saw the evenings Marcus came home early, setting the badge on the table before kissing her forehead, the smell of road dust and desert wind mingling in his breath. She saw the mornings he pulled the car out of the driveway, serious as if heading to an unnamed battlefield, and she remembered his last words that morning. "Stay safe. I'll be back tonight." That promise was never fulfilled, but today the badge had returned. No blood, no body, just a small object forgotten in a silent mailbox for 9 years. To Carmen, it was proof that memory endured, and those forgotten years might just be the first step toward a greater truth, finding its way back. Hinter de Furn was Agent Victoria Sterling, sat in the temporary office at the DHS Copper Ridge branch, the evidence bag from mailbox 68 before her. Her hands carefully turned over each item, thin rubber gloves brushing lightly against their surfaces as if afraid to touch something sacred or dangerous. The badge was clear, the fabric identifiable, but the note "I didn't break." They did kept her uneasy. Something about the handwriting, the slanted, blurred ink, suggested the writer was hurried or trembling, or perhaps desperate. She ordered the forensic team to reanalyze the paper. Not just the ink, but fingerprints, moisture, any biological traces. But the surprise came from the fabric bag. When examining its base, a technician noticed a subtle extra seam, slightly misaligned. Victoria authorized cutting it open. Inside, hidden between 2 layers of fabric, was a small silver-gray USB drive, a classic model from the late 1990s. No label, no serial number. Victoria's lips tightened, her eyes fixed on the tiny device. Of all the scenarios she'd prepared for, finding a digital device tucked in rough fabric was unexpected. The tech team set up an air-gapped computer and opened the drive. The contents were sparse. A single encrypted file, password protected, named Highway 102 logfinal.pdf. Victoria frowned. Highway 102 was the route Marcus took the day he vanished. Official records said he shouldn't have been on that route, but his shift commander, Derek Walsh, confirmed he went off course. The file name felt like a rebuttal. Evidence Marcus left, trying to explain what really happened. The problem, no one knew the password. Victoria tried Marcus's birth date, employee ID, badge number. Nothing worked. She decided to keep the USB and send a copy to the State Data Analysis Lab. But the biggest breakthrough came that afternoon when Glenn, the postal worker, returned looking uneasy. "I think I missed something," he said. "I checked the storage drawer behind mailbox 68 and found something odd stuck in a wooden gap. It was a small item wrapped in old newspaper. A mini cassette tape, the kind used in 1990s handheld recorders. Its clear plastic case had yellowed with age." Victoria stared, feeling the room's air drain away. "Find a tape player." Now, in a small soundproof meeting room, the old cassette player whirred. The tape ran smoothly, a faint hiss, then a breath. Then Marcus's voice, soft but unmistakable. "September 4th shift, Highway 102, 1742. I'm approaching an unidentified vehicle, silver pickup, license plate partially covered with tape. 3 people inside. One just signaled me to stop. A pause. Footsteps crunching on sand. Then Marcus again, quieter. They mentioned Derek Walsh. They want me to call him." A longer pause. Victoria froze. On the tape, Marcus's voice trembled. "I don't know what's happening. They're armed. The tape cut off abruptly. No final sound, no gunshot, no scream, just silence. Victoria gripped the headset, a chill running down her spine. "Come. They want me to call him." Derek Walsh, the last person to report Marcus went off route, the one who repeatedly said he just followed orders. But that name wasn't mentioned by chance in the desert. The question was, who kept this tape? And why was it hidden? Not at the scene, not in evidence storage, but in a wooden drawer behind a forgotten mailbox. Someone clearly didn't want the truth found too soon, but they also didn't want it buried forever. As if they were playing a long game, and this was the first piece they'd chosen to play after nearly a decade of waiting. As dust settled outside the office, Victoria opened her notebook and scribbled 2 lines. Derek Walsh, Highway 102. Call intercepted. Restricted access. She sat still for a long time, staring at the silent tape player, a strange feeling rising. Not hope, not anger, but a chilling certainty that someone was watching, not from afar, but very close. And they knew she'd begun tracing the path Marcus once took, the path leading to where truths are hidden, like forgotten possessions in locked boxes. First to the next noon, Victoria parked in front of a red brick house tucked away in an old residential area on the west side of Copper Ridge. The front lawn was yellowed, and an old pickup truck sat in the half-open garage, revealing spare tires and a few rusted toolboxes. She checked the badge, the mini cassette, and the USB data extract in her bag before stepping out of the car. The man she was about to meet was Derek Walsh, Marcus Rivera's closest teammate and the last person to confirm the wrong route that led to Marcus's disappearance. Derek opened the door after 3 knocks. He was in his early 60s, lean but still sturdy. His first glance at Victoria wasn't surprise, but defensiveness, as if he knew this day would come. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice dry. "Agent Victoria Sterling, Department of Homeland Security. I want to talk about Marcus Rivera." Derek stood still for a second. His eyes flickered. Then he stepped aside. Come in. The house smelled of old motor oil and stale coffee. The dining table was cluttered with stacks of newspapers and unopened bills. Derek poured 2 glasses of tap water. No ice, no pleasantries, and sat across from Victoria, chin propped on his hand. What do you want to know? On September 4th, 1995, you were the shift coordinator for Marcus Rivera. Records state he went off route on his own. Correct? Correct, Derek answered quickly, without blinking. Victoria placed a copy of the Highway 102 Tonner Log Beach Honor Final PDF file on the table. The problem is, a device Marcus left behind shows his assigned route was Highway 102, not Route 77C as the altered records claim. Care to explain? Derek stared at the papers but didn't respond. Also, Victoria continued, in a tape hidden outside the system, Marcus said the group he confronted mentioned your name. They said, call Derek Walsh. This time, Derek leaned back slightly. His fingers tapped the table lightly. I don't know about that, he said slowly. Maybe he misheard. I had nothing to do with. Nothing to do with it? Victoria cut in, her voice lowering. He disappeared right after that encounter. His badge was hidden in a locked mailbox. Your name was mentioned on the tape. So what should I believe? Derek stood, walked to the kitchen, and turned his back to Victoria. He poured more water, though his first glass was untouched. Marcus was a good man, he said after a long silence. He believed in the system, in the law. Maybe I'm not so sure anymore. Things happen at the border that, unless you see them with your own eyes, you wouldn't believe. Victoria watched him silently. You told investigators Marcus showed signs of mental instability. Remember that? Derek didn't turn around. I was forced to write that after they closed the case. I thought it was over. Who's they? Victoria asked sharply. Who forced you to write it? Derek stayed silent. Finally, he sighed, set the glass in the sink, and returned to the table. His face was ashen. There was a special coordination group from Phoenix. No uniforms, no name tags. They operated independently. They took the files, interviewed us all, then decided what to edit. Did you note any names, descriptions, anything? Derek shook his head. I did, but I burned them. I was scared. Carmen came to me in 1996. She was crying. I couldn't look her in the eye. I thought if she knew I stayed silent, she'd never forgive me. Victoria gripped her bag strap. I'm not here for forgiveness, Mr. Walsh. I'm here to reopen what everyone neatly folded and shoved into a drawer. She stood and headed for the door. But before leaving, she turned back. One last thing. Why did they mention your name on the tape? What did they know about you that Marcus didn't? Derek didn't answer immediately. His eyes drifted to the window where afternoon light spilled onto the dry lawn. Very softly, he said, because I worked for them once. Victoria narrowed her eyes. Them? Derek nodded faintly. The Shadow Network. A nameless organization, no official code. They control border information, not for safety, but for profit. And Marcus saw something he wasn't supposed to. Victoria left the house in silence, her heart pounding. The western sky was turning copper red, the wind whistling through rotting fences like whispers from another world. Tidine, an old ally, had confessed, and now she was stepping into a land where every word could be erased, where truth didn't die from denial, but because no one dared speak it. The story of Marcus Rivera, a Border Patrol agent erased silently in the system's shadow zone, is not just a tale of mysterious crime. It's a profound metaphor for what unfolds quietly in America today. The tension between security and human rights, law and invisible power, true voices and the machinery of silence. Marcus didn't die in a shootout or bloody clash. He vanished for asking the right question when no one was allowed to. His death was never confirmed, never investigated, and the system chose to erase him from data like a corrupted file cleaned out. This reflects a real danger in modern society when honest individuals face gray zones in institutions without proper protections. In an America where trust in law enforcement wanes amid scandals and punished whistleblowers, this story is a stark reminder. Truth should never depend on who has the power to define it. Like Victoria, the young agent who defied internal pressure to pursue justice, each of us can be a guardian of truth. Not with weapons, but with unwavering commitment to what's right. The practical lesson: keep records, speak out against wrongs, trust your moral instincts, even as an ordinary person in a vast system. Because if no one remembers Marcus Rivera, no one will remember anyone. And when a society stops remembering those who protected it, it begins to vanish into the shadow zone of history. If you believe truth deserves to be heard, even when buried under silence and power, hit subscribe to join us in stepping into the unnamed shadow zones. Thank you for staying with us. See you in the next video, where memory never surrenders. The Tampa Bay Mystery. The disappearance of Sophia Chen, a secret that lived among us. What if I told you that for 15 years, the man who brutally murdered a 20-year-old college student lived just 2 blocks away from her grieving parents? That he attended their candlelight vigils, helped distribute missing person flyers, and even offered condolences to the victim's mother, all while knowing exactly where her daughter's body lay? What if I told you that this same man looked Victoria Chen in the eyes, shook her trembling hand, and said, "God bless you," as she thanked him for helping search for her missing daughter? This is not fiction. This is not a nightmare. This is the chilling true story of how a killer hid in plain sight for nearly 2 decades, fooling an entire community, including the victim's own family. Tonight, we uncover the shocking truth behind one of Florida's most haunting cold cases, a case that will make you question everyone you think you know. This is the story of Sophia Chen. Chapter 1. The night everything changed. Victoria and Marcus Chen sat in their small home overlooking Tampa Bay, their hearts heavy with dread. A growing sense of fear consumed every fleeting moment of hope. In desperation, they called the Clearwater Police Department to report their daughter missing. That call marked the beginning of a nightmare that neither the Chen family nor this coastal community could have ever imagined. When the phone rang at the Clearwater Police Department on the evening of April 13, 2008, Marcus Chen's trembling voice was recorded in the report. "My daughter hasn't come home since last night. Please help us." The report was quickly relayed to night patrol units, and within hours, an official search began. Officers retraced Sophia's usual route from the coffee shop where she worked to the road leading to Honeymoon Island. As the night deepened, cold sea salt breezes stung the faces of the search team. But in the tense atmosphere, everyone understood that every passing second was critical. Less than an hour later, flashlights scanning the beach parking lot froze on an unsettling sight. Sophia's silver sedan sat silently in a corner, its door slightly ajar, keys still in the ignition. There were no signs of preparation for a trip, no suitcase or belongings. Her canvas bag lay neatly on the passenger seat containing only a few books and a notebook. Everything suggested she had stepped out in a hurry and vanished without a trace. As investigators shone their lights on the sand near the parking lot, they noticed chaotic footprints deeply imprinted, overlapping in no clear direction. One officer bent down and picked up a dark blue piece of fabric caked with mud. Under closer inspection, they realized it was a torn pair of jeans with a small dried blood stain on the hem. The scene suddenly grew heavy. This was no longer a simple missing person case, but bore the signs of a crime. News spread quickly, and within hours, the beach was cordoned off with yellow caution tape. Police cars lined up, their red and blue lights flashing against the palm trees while the waves continued to crash indifferently. Clearwater residents began to gather, anxious whispers spreading. "Is it really Sophia? It can't be. She was smiling at me in the coffee shop yesterday. Fear and confusion rippled through the community as Sophia wasn't just a stranger. She was a familiar face. Chapter 2. A Family's Worst Nightmare. Sophia's parents arrived soon after. Victoria Chen collapsed at the side of her daughter's car, her trembling hands touching the hood, still dusted with sea salt. Marcus had to be supported by an officer, his eyes vacant as he stared at the sand, where a flurry of footprints suggested his daughter's final struggle. Hot tears mingled with the salty sea breeze, leaving a wound in their hearts that even without answers, they knew signaled Sophia had met with harm. That night, police deployed K-9 units to search the beach. The dogs followed a trail toward the water's edge, stopping where the tide met the shore. High waves had erased most traces, making further tracking impossible. Divers were sent into the shallow waters, searching through murky currents, but found only drifting debris and clumps of seaweed. Despair settled over the search team. As midnight struck, the search was paused due to limited visibility and rising tides. The Chen family was escorted home, exhausted and broken. Victoria sat motionless on a chair, her eyes vacant, while Marcus paced aimlessly. In their small living room, a photo of Sophia smiling with her dog became a knife to their hearts. On the morning of April 14th, local news broadcast an urgent alert. University of South Florida student missing, car abandoned at Honeymoon Island. Fear enveloped Clearwater. Parents warned their children to avoid going out at night, and students whispered anxiously on campus. Sophia's friends couldn't believe the girl who studied with them just days ago had vanished. Questions swirled. Where did Sophia go? What happened on that dark beach? Who left those chaotic footprints and the blood-stained jeans? No one had answers, only a chilling truth. Clearwater was no longer the safe haven they once believed it to be. Watson, Chapter 3. The prime suspect emerges. In the first 2 days after Sophia's car and the unsettling evidence were found at Honeymoon Island, the Clearwater police worked tirelessly. They interviewed dozens of Sophia's close contacts, classmates, co-workers, neighbors. But the name that surfaced most in the investigation was Alexander Blake, Sophia's ex-boyfriend. Alexander, 22, was a business administration student at the same university. The two had dated for over a year, considered a perfect couple by many, but their relationship ended in January 2008, 3 months before Sophia's disappearance. The reason for the breakup was unclear. Some friends said Sophia wanted to focus on her studies and marine lab work, while Alexander leaned into partying and socializing. Others claimed tensions arose late in the previous year, with frequent arguments over jealousy. As police sought potential suspects, Alexander became the prime focus. Within 48 hours of the missing person report, investigators knocked on the door of the apartment where Alexander lived with his stepfather on the outskirts of Clearwater. Detectives noted that Alexander was cooperative, but visibly nervous. He denied any involvement in Sophia's disappearance, insisting their relationship was over. When asked about the night of April 12th, Alexander said he was at home, but only his stepfather could confirm his alibi. This raised suspicions as it meant he had an unverified window of time. In the following days, witnesses came forward. A classmate named Emma reported seeing Sophia and Alexander argue heatedly at a bar near campus a week before Sophia vanished. According to Emma, the fight centered on Alexander's refusal to let go of the relationship while Sophia insisted on distance. Emma vividly recalled Alexander's angry expression as he left, making his alibi seem less credible. News of Alexander's investigation leaked, sparking a firestorm among students. Friends of Sophia were divided. Some believed Alexander could have acted rashly in anger, while others thought he was incapable of such harm. The Chen family was torn. Victoria had once seen Alexander as a son, but after hearing about the argument, she began to fear he was responsible for their daughter's tragedy. Police pressed Alexander further, citing indirect evidence placing him near Clearwater that night. But Alexander stuck to his story. He was home with his stepfather watching a basketball game. His stepfather corroborated this, claiming Alexander never left the house. To verify or refute this, police collected Alexander's DNA and compared it to samples from the torn jeans at the scene. This was a pivotal moment as DNA testing in 2008, while not as advanced as today, could still identify direct links. The results stunned many. Alexander's DNA did not match any evidence at the scene. This shifted the investigation and public opinion. Some criticized the police for hastily labeling Alexander the prime suspect, arguing it ruined his life. Though temporarily cleared, Alexander remained tied to the case, facing pressure from peers, professors, and strangers, forcing him to pause his studies and leave Clearwater. For the Chens, Alexander's exclusion brought no relief, only deeper confusion. If not Alexander, who could have harmed Sophia? The question hung in the air unanswered, deepening their nightmare. In a local TV interview, Victoria Chen tearfully said, "I don't know what happened. I just want my daughter back." Her words silenced Clearwater, underscoring that Sophia's disappearance was no longer just the Chen family's pain. It was a wound shared by the entire town. Though Alexander was no longer the main suspect, suspicion lingered. To many, he remained the angry ex-boyfriend who fought with Sophia days before she vanished. In the shadowy gaps of the investigation, no one knew the obsession would haunt Alexander for years like an indelible shadow. Smonar, Chapter 4, A Community in Mourning. When DNA results cleared Alexander Blake as the primary suspect, the Clearwater police informed the Chen family that the investigation would explore other leads. But this brought no comfort to Sophia's parents. They didn't care whether Alexander was guilty. They only knew their daughter was gone without a trace, and each passing day made the hope of finding her alive feel more fragile. Victoria Chen spiraled into despair, barely able to leave her bed, while Marcus tried to stay strong for his wife, though he too was breaking inside. A week after Sophia's disappearance, friends, professors, and Clearwater residents held a prayer vigil on Honeymoon Island, where her car and initial evidence were found. Hundreds of candles formed a circle on the sand, their flickering light reflecting on tear-streaked faces. Sophia's friends and fellow marine biology students stood in a line, holding each other tightly, many sobbing uncontrollably. One of her professors spoke, voice choked. Sophia was an exceptional student, a kind soul who dreamed of researching to protect the ocean. She didn't deserve to vanish like this. The Chen family sat silently in the candle-lit circle, Victoria clutching a photo of Sophia to her chest, her hands trembling as if holding on to her daughter's last presents. Kurtioin, Marcus, a stoic man, couldn't stop tears from streaming down his face as he stared into the dark sea. The relentless waves seemed to echo the crowd's sobs, making the vigil a moment of unprecedented grief in Clearwater's memory. Local media swarmed the event. Putani. Reporters crowded the beach, cameras flashing relentlessly. The largest Tampa Bay newspaper ran the headline, "Clearwater mourns Sophia Chen." TV stations broadcast live, showing the Chen sitting on the sand, surrounded by candles and comforting embraces. The coverage shocked Florida, piling pressure on the police to provide answers and prove justice still existed. But as the community grieved, other voices emerged. Rumors, speculations, and accusations. Despite DNA evidence clearing him, Alexander Blake's name kept resurfacing. Tabloids ran headlines like, "Is the ex-boyfriend truly innocent? Or can the stepfather's alibi be trusted?" In town forums and bars, debates raged. Some insisted Alexander was involved, while others argued the police were overlooking a more dangerous stranger. Tensions divided Clearwater. A group of students held a small protest outside the university carrying signs demanding justice for Sophia. Some openly named Alexander, claiming he slipped through a loophole. Others who knew him defended him, arguing he was scapegoated for the community's anger. The atmosphere grew heavy with conflict seeping into everyday conversations. Amid the disputes, the Chens sank deeper into sorrow. Their small home overflowed with flowers, prayer cards, and food from neighbors. But these only highlighted the unbearable void. Sophia's empty bed, her open book on the desk, her sneakers neatly by the door, as if she'd walk in any moment. Victoria spent hours in Sophia's room, holding her daughter's last-worn sweater, its familiar scent choking her with grief. Police held press conferences, insisting they were exploring all possibilities and ruling no one out. But the public wasn't easily appeased. Every new article, crime scene photo, or rumor fueled the case's grip on Clearwater, transforming Sophia's loss from a personal tragedy into a collective obsession. The once peaceful tourist town known for its beaches was now shrouded in fear and mistrust. In a TV interview, a neighbor said, "I don't let my daughter walk alone at night anymore. If this could happen to Sophia, it could happen to anyone." Her words captured a bitter truth. The community didn't just mourn Sophia. They felt robbed of the safety they once trusted. As the candles on Honeymoon Island faded, one truth loomed larger than ever. The Chen's pain was no longer theirs alone. It had become a crack in the heart of the town, a wound that time and prayers couldn't yet heal. Chapter 5. When Hope Becomes Despair. After the beachside vigil and a flurry of press conferences, many in Clearwater believed the police would soon find the person behind Sophia Chen's disappearance. But those initial days of fervor gave way to a harsh reality. No new evidence emerged. Police interviewed dozens of witnesses and reviewed every camera around the beach and coffee shop, but all leads ended in dead ends. DNA from the torn jeans and bloodstain was sent to CODIS, the national database, but in 2008, technology wasn't advanced enough to yield a match. The summer passed in exhaustion and despair. News coverage continued, but its frequency dwindled, moving from front pages to small corners of local news sections. The faces that once held candles on the beach gradually returned to their daily lives. Only the Chen family remained trapped in a vortex of pain, never finding relief. Marcus called the police station regularly, asking for updates, but each time received the same response. "We're still investigating, but there's nothing new." Every time he hung up, he felt another piece of hope slip away. By October 2008, after over 6 months of fruitless searching, the Clearwater police had to admit they had no viable leads. Sophia Chen's case was officially classified as a cold case. Those words appeared in the investigation file like an invisible sentence for the Chen family. Justice was frozen, and their daughter might never return. When this news spread, Clearwater was shaken once more, but this time in heavy silence. Gone were the sensational headlines and crowds gathering at the beach. Only a few short articles mentioned that the case had reached a dead end, urging anyone with information to contact the police. But those words faded in the minds of many, much like the prayer candles had long since burned out. The Chen family, however, refused to accept the silence. Despite her declining health, Victoria joined support groups for families of missing persons. She wrote dozens of letters to the Florida governor and the FBI, hoping a higher authority would take notice. Marcus tirelessly printed flyers, posting them in shops, post offices, and schools, featuring Sophia's smiling face from her high school graduation. "Remember this face," he told anyone who took a flyer. It can't be allowed to disappear. Their efforts touched many, but some began to turn away. Neighbors sighed, whispering that the Chens were torturing themselves and should learn to accept reality. But how could they accept it when Sophia's room remained untouched, her bed still bearing the imprint of her pillow, and every photo on the wall reminded them that a part of their flesh and blood was gone without answers. Chapter 6. Years of Silence. In the years that followed, Sophia Chen's case was only mentioned on the anniversary of her disappearance. Old friends gathered with the family to light candles, pray, and then disperse into the night. The broader public had moved on, caught up in new events and hotter news. To the town, Sophia's case had become an old scar, painful, but no longer bleeding. For Marcus and Victoria, the wound never healed. The loss of their daughter grayed their hair and slowed their steps. At every meal, Sophia's empty chair haunted them, and in fitful sleep, Victoria dreamed of her daughter walking through the door, waving and smiling as she had that fateful night. Cold case, in those two chilling words, not only froze the investigation file, but also a part of the Chen's soul. For them, time stopped on April 12th, 2008. And for years to come, Clearwater would live with a haunting truth. The person who took Sophia Chen was out there, invisible within the community, while justice remained silent. From 2009 onward, Sophia Chen's case was officially a cold case, and silence settled over Clearwater like a thick fog. Each year on April 12th, the Chens held a small memorial at Honeymoon Island. Candles were lit, sea winds blew fiercely, and Sophia's face in the photo glowed brightly in the light. But over time, attendance dwindled from hundreds to dozens, then just a small group of loyal friends and former professors. For Sophia's parents, this didn't diminish the memorial's meaning, but it underscored their growing isolation in their quest for justice. Marcus and Victoria visibly aged. By 2010, Marcus's hair was nearly all gray, and Victoria's once steady steps grew sluggish. The lingering pain of years took its toll, aging them twice as fast. Victoria was hospitalized multiple times for heart issues, which doctors attributed to prolonged stress and depression. Yet each time she returned home, she sat in Sophia's room for hours, her eyes fixed on her daughter's belongings. Marcus, though tougher, sat quietly on the porch each night, staring at Tampa Bay, where he believed his daughter was lost. To him, time halted in 2008, and everything since was a repetitive cycle without Sophia's smile. In Clearwater, Sophia Chen's case became an unhealed wound. Residents spoke of it as a cautionary tale, a haunting shadow. Parents told their children Sophia's story to warn them against going out alone at night. New students at the University of South Florida heard of the girl who vanished at Honeymoon Island as a sad town legend. Though no longer on front pages, the case lingered in the collective subconscious, a crack in Clearwater's peaceful facade. Each year, local media ran a brief article on the anniversary, repeating, "Police continue to seek information." The Chens never give up hope. After dozens of such reports, they became formulaic with little expectation of breakthroughs. Some grew tired of the topic, believing further efforts were futile. But for the Chens, each small article was a lifeline they clung to. In 2015, Clearwater celebrated its centennial. Amid festive events, the Chens quietly set up a memorial table for Sophia in a corner of the main square, with her photo and white flowers. Passers-by paused briefly before rejoining the cheerful crowd. The contrast stung Marcus. "This town has forgotten her," he sighed to Victoria, but she shook her head. "No, they haven't forgotten. They just don't know what else to do." Time marched on and Sophia's case reached its 10th, then 15th year. Clearwater changed. New resorts sprang up. Tourists flocked. But Sophia's memory lingered in whispered stories. To many, she became a symbol of safety's fragility, a reminder that even in a peaceful tourist town, darkness could strike. For the Chens, the memory never faded. Marcus kept contacting the police, knowing the case was nearly frozen. Victoria attended meetings with families of the missing, becoming a familiar face at small conferences. Their private pain somehow merged with others' grief, forming a bonded community of loss. From 2009 to 2022, Sophia Chen's case was a recurring sad song. Remembrance, hope, disappointment, silence, repeat. Her parents never gave up. "We won't stop searching," Marcus said in a 2020 interview, his eyes resolute despite his frail frame. "Because Sophia deserves the truth." My daughter deserves justice. Their persistence, in a town that had grown accustomed to living with the shadow of an unsolved case, kept Sophia's memory alive. Clearwater, in one way or another, still owed the Chens a truth, an answer. And for 14 long silent years, that haunting waited for a chance to reignite. Chapter 7. A breakthrough after 15 years. In early 2023, as Clearwater prepared for spring, a sudden spark pierced the darkness that had shrouded the Chens for nearly 15 years. Florida joined a genetic genealogy program, a new investigative method successfully used in other states to trace criminals through relatives' DNA in public databases. To most, it was just another legal news item. But for the Chens, hearing that Clearwater police would resubmit Sophia's uncracked DNA samples, their hearts stirred for the first time in years. In March 2023, state lab experts re-examined the biological sample from the torn jeans found near Honeymoon Island. In 2008, technology could only extract basic DNA segments, insufficient for a CODIS match. Now, advanced sequencing allowed analysts to reconstruct a near-complete genetic profile. The weeks-long process was like dusting off puzzle pieces, piecing them together to reveal a clearer picture. When the complete DNA profile was entered into the system, a stunning result emerged: a partial match with a distant relative in a public genealogy database. From this faint link, forensic genealogists began reconstructing a family tree, tracing branches through marriages and migrations in and out of Clearwater over decades. The meticulous work, like assembling a vast puzzle, centered on a name: Vincent Torres. Vincent Torres, 52, had lived 2 blocks from the Chens in 2008. At the time of Sophia's disappearance, he was 37, a freelance air conditioner repairman hired by many in the neighborhood. A quiet man living alone after a failed marriage, he had few close friends. During the initial 2008 investigation, his name didn't stand out. He wasn't among Sophia's acquaintances and had no serious criminal record, only minor infractions like speeding and disorderly conduct. Like hundreds of others, he was dismissed as a suspect. Now, with DNA evidence, Vincent Torres emerged as a critical link. Investigators quietly began surveillance. They monitored his current residence, a small rented house in North Clearwater, where he worked sporadically, sometimes taking repair jobs, sometimes vanishing for days. They noted his habits, daily routes, and waited for a chance to collect a comparison DNA sample. The opportunity came when Vincent discarded a half-drunk soda can in a public trash bin. Investigators retrieved it and sent it to the lab. Within a week, the result confirmed. The DNA on the can matched the sample from Sophia's genes. After 15 years, the police had found the man hidden in the shadows. When this news reached the Chens, Victoria broke down, crying with both relief and renewed pain. "I waited so long to hear a name," she said, choking back tears in an interview. Marcus nodded silently, his trembling hands clasped as if finally able to name the person who took Sophia. Clearwater was rocked again. Vincent Torres's name echoed in conversations, and people were stunned to realize the suspect had lived just minutes from the Chens. Former neighbors recalled a quiet man who avoided interaction, often walking to the beach alone at night. Some admitted feeling uneasy around him, but never imagined he could be tied to such a horrific crime. Chapter 8. The Arrest That Shook a Community. On July 14, 2023, Clearwater police arrested Vincent Torres at his home. He was handcuffed in front of neighbors, his face emotionless. The initial charges: first-degree murder and kidnapping of Sophia Chen. When footage of the arrest aired, many in the community exhaled as if an invisible weight had lifted. Yet, alongside relief grew outrage. Why did it take 15 years for Vincent Torres's name to surface? Many criticized the police for overlooking him early on, arguing that earlier use of advanced technology could have brought justice sooner, sparing the Chens years of torment. The revelation was bittersweet. Victoria said, "I thought I'd die without knowing what happened to Sophia." Now I know, but this truth tears my heart again. He lived so close to us. Sophia must have passed him so many times, unaware she was facing a monster. Marcus chose silence. At a press conference, he said only, "We believe justice will continue its course." His eyes no longer held the despair of before, but carried a heavy weight, as if he knew the journey wasn't over. The long silence was broken, and from a tiny DNA fragment, a new door opened in Sophia Chen's case. Clearwater buzzed with talk, anger, and anticipation for final answers. As Vincent Torres was led to a cell, the community knew they were witnessing the next chapter of a tragedy that had never closed. The news of Vincent Torres' arrest by Clearwater police in July 2023 spread like wildfire. Within hours, images of the 52-year-old being handcuffed and led from his small rented house in the suburbs flooded local TV and social media. Clearwater residents sat stunned, realizing the man accused of Sophia Chen's murder wasn't a distant stranger, but the quiet neighbor they once knew. Puni. Memories of Vincent flooded back. He'd worked as an air conditioner repairman, often visiting homes for emergency fixes, always soft-spoken, reserved, but polite. Some neighbors recalled him helping with small tasks, carrying groceries, changing light bulbs, even sharing oranges from his yard. "I can't believe it. He was the last person I'd suspect," a woman from his 2008 neighborhood said on a news broadcast. The community was further shaken when reports revealed Vincent had joined the volunteer search in the early days of Sophia's disappearance. Witnesses confirmed seeing him during flyer distributions, even patrolling Honeymoon Island's shore. The idea that the killer stood among those praying for the victim, feigning empathy, sent chills through everyone. "It's a sickening betrayal," a retired officer from the case said. "He was there watching us search, hearing our prayers, knowing exactly where Sophia was. For the Chens, the shock was like a knife twisting in an unhealed wound." Victoria collapsed upon learning Vincent had been among them during those dark days in 2008. The image of the quiet man nodding in condolence, handing her a water bottle at a vigil now felt like cruel mockery. "I thanked him. I said, 'God bless you,'" she sobbed in an interview. "All along, he was the monster who killed my daughter." Marcus was equally stunned. He recalled Vincent visiting their home to fix a broken air conditioner weeks before Sophia vanished. The firm handshake, the faint smile, now blood-stained memories. "I let him into our house, past Sophia's room," he said, voice trembling. "Nah, if I'd known..." The sentence trailed off, but everyone understood. If he'd known, he'd have done anything to protect his daughter. Clearwater's emotions split into layers. Some felt deeply betrayed, having seen Vincent as part of the town. Others were horrified by his ability to hide, a killer living among them, blending into daily life, undetected for 15 years. Fear spread with whispers that you never really know your neighbors. The media quickly seized the story with dramatic flair. A bold headline appeared in the Tampa Bay Times. "Search volunteer turns out to be killer. Clearwater in shock." TV stations replayed 2008 footage showing Vincent blending into the crowd, his face impassive among those holding candles for Sophia. The sight sent chills across Florida. Alexander Blake, the ex-boyfriend once suspected, gave a rare interview. Now in his 30s, he said, "I've lived 15 years under this case's shadow, with many thinking I was guilty. Now the truth is out, and it's more horrific than anyone imagined." His voice wavered when mentioning Sophia, his eyes reflecting a mix of relief and bitterness. In the days following Vincent's arrest, Clearwater was engulfed in turmoil. Residents gathered outside the police station, holding signs demanding justice. Many wept, recalling memories of Sophia and years of fear and mutual suspicion. An atmosphere of anger, pain, and relief enveloped the town. For the Chen family, outrage overshadowed all else. At a press conference, Victoria said, I didn't just lose my daughter. I was deceived by the man who stood with us, heard our prayers. He looked me in the eye without blinking. It's not just a crime. It's cruelty beyond imagination. The community understood this shock wouldn't fade easily. Clearwater would forever be marked by the realization that for years they walked beside a killer unknowingly. As Vincent Torres sat in his cell awaiting trial, that horror rippled through every street and home. The town was no longer the same. Chapter 9. The Confession. After the shock of Vincent Torres's arrest, Clearwater police entered the critical phase. Interrogation. In a cold room under fluorescent lights, the 52-year-old's wrinkled face was illuminated as he initially sat silent, arms crossed, eyes down, breathing heavily as if building a wall between himself and the world. But after hours of persistent questioning, his silence crumbled. Vincent recounted that April 2008 night in a flat, emotionless tone, as if describing an old habit. He said he drove by Honeymoon Island after drinking a few beers in his garage. Seeing Sophia step out of her car with her canvas bag, he stopped, initially intending to strike up a chat for fun. He recalled calling out, asking if she wanted to walk with him. Sophia paused for a moment, shook her head, and quickened her pace toward the sand. In his confession, Vincent admitted that her rejection ignited a surge of rage. He described running to her, grabbing her arm, trying to pull her back. She resisted, screamed, and in a blind fury, he punched her face. Sophia fell to the sand, crying and shouting. Vincent said he feared her cries would draw attention, so he lunged and strangled her with both hands. I didn't mean to kill her right then, he said coldly. But when she stopped breathing, I knew it had gone too far. The interrogation room fell silent as those words echoed. Investigators pressed further, and Vincent detailed the gruesome aftermath. After Sophia went limp, he dragged her body to nearby bushes. During the struggle, her jeans tore, stained with mud and blood from her nose. Panicked that the clothing could be evidence, he tossed the jeans into a muddy area near the beach. The chaotic footprints in the sand, shoe marks, drag trails, were the result of that brief but brutal struggle. Vincent confessed to leaving Sophia's car in the lot, keys in the ignition as if she just stepped out. He then drove home, pretending nothing happened. I thought no one would know, he admitted, and I was right for a very long time. The chilling part was how every detail matched the 2008 crime scene. The torn, muddy, blood-stained jeans, the chaotic footprints, the car with keys left in it, all aligned perfectly, as if he were reading the police report. This not only confirmed his confession, but shattered the faint hope that Sophia's death was less painful. In reality, she was killed for a single shake of her head. The Chens were informed after the interrogation. Hearing Vincent's confession, Victoria collapsed. She just said no. One word and it cost her life, she sobbed. Marcus, quieter, clenched his fists, his face pale with suppressed rage. They'd waited 15 years for an answer, but this one was crueler than anything they'd imagined. In Clearwater, Vincent's confession was as shocking as his arrest. Residents shuddered, realizing Sophia's death wasn't a complex plot or calculated scheme, but the irrational outburst of a grown man unable to handle rejection. The scariest part is it could happen to anyone, a university student said on TV. A normal moment, a harmless refusal, and a life is gone. Media outlets dissected Vincent's motives, labeling it a crime of arrogance and anger. Psychologists on air explained that some individuals harbor latent instability that can erupt violently from minor triggers, but such explanations didn't ease the pain. Clearwater faced the stark truth. Sophia Chen died at the hands of a neighbor they trusted on a peaceful night simply because she dared to say no. In the following days, police released more evidence corroborating the confession. Mud from the jeans matched samples from the marsh near Honeymoon Island. Footprints matched Vincent's shoe size from the time, And crucially, his DNA was on the genes. It formed a complete picture, leaving no room for doubt. As this news spread, fear and anger created a heavy atmosphere in Clearwater. Memorials for Sophia resumed with denser candlelight, but also faces flushed with fury. People chanted for justice while the Chens sat in the front, their faces etched with pain, both resolved and deepened. Vincent Torres, while detained, showed no remorse. When an investigator asked if he had a message for the Chens, he shrugged. "I don't know what to say. It happened a long time ago." This attitude fueled public outrage, revealing a chilling indifference in the killer's soul beyond words. After 15 long years, Clearwater finally knew the truth about Sophia Chen's death. But it brought no peace, only a haunting question. Why did a headshake cost a life? And why did the community wait so long to learn that justice could have come sooner, unhindered by time and technology's limits? Chapter 10. Public Outrage and System Failures. Vincent Torres's cold confession not only ended 15 years of mystery, but ignited an unprecedented wave of outrage in Clearwater. If residents were initially stunned that the killer was a friendly neighbor, their anger now turned to the 2008 police who overlooked Vincent, leaving the Chens in agony for over a decade and a half. Many openly criticized. Why wasn't a grown man living 2 blocks from the victim with odd behavior investigated more thoroughly? Why weren't DNA traces limited by 2008 technology preserved for earlier retesting? A former teacher of